Hello, everybody, and welcome to our February 2025 meeting. Tonight, we are still having presentations entitled Out of Your Mind and Onto the Page. Evelyn, who is our programs chair, would like to introduce our guest.
Nancy Hayes Hill is an artist and Episcopal deacon who lives in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Her working career was in the field of advertising and graphic design, from which she retired in 2020 to devote more time to her dual vocations of ministry and art. She shares a home with her husband, Julian, and her trusty feline sidekick, Samantha. She began drawing as soon as she could hold a crayon and was lucky enough to have parents who encouraged their shy child to express herself on paper, especially her father, who would amuse her by drawing cartoons, sometimes in ballpoint pen, on the bottoms of her feet. She took her first calligraphy course at the age of 17 and has incorporated lettering in her art ever since. She's been teaching art journaling classes online for the past couple of years. In addition to individual pieces, she has been working on her art journals for over 20 years, and her artwork from these journals has appeared in Alphabet, Bound and Lettered, and also in the most recent Speedball textbook. Tonight, Nancy will be showing us her artwork, including her fabulous journals. This should whet your appetite for what you can do when faced with a blank page. And Nancy does not actively participate in social media, so this is a rare glimpse into her unique creative world. I'm turning it over to you, Nancy.
Hi. Goodness, there I am, big as life. Welcome, everybody. I am so glad to be here with you tonight. I have about 65 hours worth of stuff I could talk about, so I'm going to try very hard to distill things into showing you kind of my journey over the last, I don't know, maybe 25 or so years of beginning to keep things in a journal, in a notebook. I'd always drawn, but my journals came about kind of by accident because I just wanted to start keeping things all in one place. So recipes went in there, meeting notes, all sorts of doodles, everything. And eventually it just morphed into having two huge volumes of a whole bunch of stuff spanning many, many years. And now I have about 3 different journals going because I haven't been able to find a paper I liked very well. So I've been playing around with a bunch of different things. But before we get started with that, I was reminded when you were reading the bio about my dad. And my dad was drawing. I have a notebook of his from high school. And I wanted to show you just a little picture, I'll hold it up, of a character he drew, which was a caricature of himself, which he called Einstein Angledome. And Einstein was this little guy over here. And he always loved doing fun stuff. And so I got some of my drawing talent from him. My mom was also very creative in different ways. And between the two of them, I've been really blessed and to have had really good training. I had my first actual calligraphy class, strangely enough, from Myrna Rosen when I was in high school in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Myrna was a graduate student teaching under Arnold Bank. And that was my introduction to calligraphy, was a semester, or actually a year-long class of italic with Myrna. And anyway, what I want to do is switch screens and go to show you some of my journal work. I can't show you every page because we'd be here for a very, very long time, but I'll pick some. So what I wanted to show you, this was the very first page of this journal, which is nothing fabulous. It is doodling And it was meeting notes from our Cream City Calligraphers meeting in 2005. I wasn't setting out to make art. I was actually just trying to keep my hand busy. And a lot of the stuff at the very beginning of these journals is just, it's fun, but it's just not great art, and none of it is supposed to be. This was just me. On the left, I was working out some lettering in a ballpoint pen, in a style that I was going to do, with a broad-edged pen later. Then on the right, I tried it again in watercolor with a broad-edged pen. The cat down on the bottom left happened to be my cat Brooks at the time, and he must have been in the room, so he just got in there as well. Again, meeting notes from having read books interspersed with playing around with lettering and design. One of the cool things about having all these years worth of journals now is that I can go back and discover themes that I wasn't aware of in my artwork. And some things that I find come back consistently throughout the years are things that have rugs in them, or weaving, or Celtic knots, or braids, or stalks of wheat. And I thought, well, what do all of these things have in common? Because they keep coming back. And it finally dawned on me that maybe one of the themes in my life might be a need for integration and bringing things together, because all of those things have different pieces that have to be woven together to make a whole. Here, I'm just working out lettering designs. And here I kept this page like this because it showed me that if you put Sharpie on Arch's text wove, it bleeds through. So that is a reminder to me not to do that. So I switched to gouache over here. Watercolor. And again, just, not particularly artful pages. Some of them are pretty messy. And you know what? It just doesn't matter. This is all just getting stuff down. These are all quotations from a book I was reading. I went back later and doodled all this crap all around them. It's not very pretty, but and again, then I was taking more notes, copying down more quotations from books, and then decided to put some sideways and some upside down or whatever. Again, more rugs. This was a lovely, lovely poem that meant so much to me from something that Julia Cameron wrote. And so her name is written as the frame on the quotation. And then I just photocopied it. And to me, it was a lovely thing. It says, "I wish I could take language and fold it like cool, moist rags. I would lay words on your forehead. I would wrap words on your wrists. There, my words would say," or something better. I would ask them to murmur, "Hush," and "Shh, it's all right." I would ask them to hold you all night. I wish I could take language and daub and soothe and cool where fever blisters and burns, where fever turns yourself against you. I wish I could take language and heal the words that were the wounds you have no names for. And that meant so much to me too, not only because I would love to be that person and do that for people, but also in a way, that's what we do as calligraphers, is we take words and we make something healing and beautiful out of them. Here, taking notes, putting cartoons in. Another one of the things I live by. In order to do something well, you must first be willing to do it badly. And I embrace that. I do things badly quite a bit, and eventually they get good. Pasted these things in from a class I took ages ago with Mike Kessig, I think. And then decided for whatever reason that I was going to draw safety pins in the borders and then make the safety pins look as if they'd been cut out of a block print. Very fiddly. Most of my work in my journal, especially in the later journals, they become meditations for me because they are so detailed and very repetitive and slow that this is the way. It's kind of a visual mantra for me. Instead of repeating something in my head over and over, I repeat strokes over and over to calm and center myself. More of the same. Let's see. I love working with speedball B's and speedball D's, which is what the lettering on the left is, a B then squared off with a pointed pen. Again, here, this is a mess, and then I spilled water on it. But hey, I think one of the lovely things about having a journal is that you don't really have the freedom to rip things out. I mean, if it's in there, it's in there. And, it is what it is. And I just accept it for what it is. I love playing with Celtic knots. Those were a couple of frames I worked on. More doodles. Now this page on the right, that's just ugly, but who cares? It was a doodle page. Now this was a doodle page that actually turned into something interesting. I was playing with an idea of developing a letter form that was based on triangles. And so these were some of the, on the left, some of the shapes I was playing with. And then I had lettered the piece on earth on another piece of paper, and I really liked it. So I stuck it on there over the lettering, and then put the red in the counter spaces and carried it across the page, and ended up being a spread here. But the red to me was the part that of the world that just is not peace. And so the peace on earth, those lettering, those three words, peace on earth, have nothing around them. It is still and calm, and yet everything around it is messy and bleeding and confused and overlapping. And I like the contrast of, hope overlaying all of that mess. And then there was on the left, me playing with that triangle lettering, and I think I decided I didn't really like it, but it was an interesting exercise. This was a page that I started. These ended up being kind of travelogue pages. I was good friends with Gwen Weaver, who some of you may know, and I would visit Gwen in the summers for my sister lived not too far away from her, and so I'd spend half the week with my sister and half the week with Gwen. And so she wrote the nice little note in my journal on the top right. But then on the way home from that visit, I got stuck in the Atlanta airport for about 5 hours. And so I sat there and I just started drawing words that reminded me of things that I'd done with Gwen and things that I had done with my sister. And then when I got home, I colored in the background. But I really liked this because the words themselves told me a whole story that I can remember. And it was shorthand for, I could have written pages and pages and pages about what we had done, but I can just look at this and I can see the word, and it's a shorthand for me of a memory for that week. Class notes from a workshop with Jean Wilson. This is cutting my initials out of Tyvek. I had, they're sideways. So if you kind of tilt your head, you can see that it says NHH. And I did the brush lettering and then cut the lettering out of Tyvek. And then I put the negative part that I cut out over here in white on the black. And I thought it made a nice design. Betty Locke gave this wonderful talk one evening at Island Magic, and she was hilarious. But one of the things that just sent me over the top was when she was talking about something and she said, well, sometimes stretch pants have no other choice. I love this page. This was one of my more meditative ones where I use a lot of these dots and swirls. And it's a very slow process, just putting dot by dot by dot, and eventually something flows out of it. But it's a way that I can get into a zone with my drawing. Here, I was writing down instructions for some origami stuff I wanted to remember. This was a page that Gwen Weaver's niece, Alex, when she was a teen, she loved my journal and wanted to write in it so badly. So I gave her a page, and that's what she wrote. So you can see as the pages progress, I'm getting a little bit more ordered with them. And I think I'm taking more time. Lots and lots of dot work all through the right-hand side, which would have taken days. Again, more work on the right, playing with making something look like it was block carved, block printed. And lots of swirls and dots. And I really love drawing my letters. I've spent many, many years doing broad-edged pen work. I'm not really a pointed pen person. But switching to the drawing just really speaks to me. And so that's kind of where I've stayed over the past several years. Bunch of class notes. Here on the left, I took this quotation, a sharp tongue can cut your own throat. And I really didn't like the way that one turned out on the left. And so then I switched gears and I lettered the one on the right. And then I know it looks cut out, but it isn't. It's all one sheet there. And everything in the background on the right, all the small lettering, are all the words that I can think of that one tells oneself to tear oneself down. And I think it it made a poignant background to the quotation itself.
Nancy, we have a question in the chat. How do you know, Mikkel is asking, how do you know when a page is done?
Oh, trial and error. And sometimes I way overwork them. I'm still learning that. I'm getting better at it. It's really hard for me to walk away. But I'm getting there. Lots more swirls here. This ended up, I think, kind of looking like one of those color blindness charts, but oh well. I love working on watercolor. Ugly pages, but they were experiments, and I won't do that again. This page on the left is what I call one of my travelogue pages. Here I drew little pictures or wrote words to remind me of the week, my vacation week. And after all these years, I can still look at this and remember what those things mean. And as I became more public with my journals and people started seeing them at calligraphy conferences, it also helped me because I'm a pretty private person. And this was a way for me to have something that was personal to me, but someone else looking at this page doesn't really know what it's about. And so I could keep my own thoughts private because I don't have to explain anything in my journal if I don't want to. No one does. But it was a way to be able to share and yet still kind of preserve my own personal space in doing so. That was a commission piece, one of the rare ones I did for a grand opening of a business. I love pencil and watercolor. This thing on the right is one of the last pages in the journal. I'm an ordained Episcopal deacon, and my husband is an Episcopal priest. And so Easter in our house is very, very busy, and there's a lot of preparation and a lot of services. And I became really, really sick the Thursday before Easter. And by the Friday, which starts all our huge church stuff, I needed to go to the hospital and ended up being admitted. And I ended up with gallstones in my bile duct. And so they had to do emergency surgery. So I was there over Easter weekend, and Easter Sunday, they released me from the hospital. And so I'd called my husband and told him that he could come pick me up. And he's like, well, I can't pick you up. I'm busy. I've got church. So I had to stay in the hospital. And so I sat there drawing gallbladders and Easter eggs, just to do something to pass the time. And just how ironic it was that on the biggest day of our church year, I was stuck in this hospital bed with nothing to do other than draw pictures.
There was a question in the chat about paper. Edie's asking, you mentioned you were looking for a paper. What about Arch's Text Wove?
This is Arch's Text Wove, and this journal and the one I'm about to show you are Arch's Text Wove. When I finished the second journal, I bound the third one with what I thought was Arch's Text Wove, and it turned out to be Arch's Text Laid, which is a completely different animal. And so I was really unhappy with that. Then I bought a few journals to try those out, and ended up giving up altogether. And unbinding the journal, the third journal, and rebinding the blank pages with Arches text wove again. So I do have that journal, but now I have 3 others started with other paper, but I love Arches text wove. So this second journal, which as you can see is quite beat up. This was 2009 to 2021. Getting a bit more formal. I never finished this title page, but it is pretty. And I can do broad edge lettering if I have to. So this journal started out with class notes from a class with Karen Ackoff in painting really delicate animals. And so those were my notes, and these were some of the animals. This was my cat, Brooks. An incredible teacher and an amazing technique, but you're using a brush that has about 2 hairs, and you're doing between 200 and 300 layers of paint of watercolor for each drawing. And even though I like slow and detailed stuff, that was a bit much for me. I did a few paintings like this, and then that was the end of that, but I did enjoy it. Here's another travelogue page on the right. On the left is a page I tipped in, but it ends right at the seam here. And then I painted colors to match on this page to make it look as if it was continuing over the page, but it really doesn't. This journal is much larger than the other one. And so the pages took much, much longer. So on something as complicated as the one on the left, I actually started the page drawing the fish, but I would build each little square. You know, maybe that was all I did one day, and another day did something else. And so gradually over time, the whole page came together. And at one point, there's this little mouse nibbling on the border there. And that came about because I had started a new medication, and I actually fell asleep while I was drawing. I was drawing the border and I trailed off to sleep. And so my hand trailed off and made this line, and the border got all ragged because I was asleep. And so when I woke up and saw what I'd done, I thought, well, it looks like a mouse chewed it. So I just put a mouse there, doubled this line, put some beads on it, and it actually kind of makes the piece. So it was a happy accident. There's some more dot work and swirl work and a recipe for spinach souffle. And the pages do look complicated, but remember that I'm only doing a little tiny bit at a time. And they gradually grow over a matter of weeks. I don't sit down and plan this entire page. I have had graphic design training, and I worked as a graphic designer, so I do know how a page goes together. And at this point, there is a bit of an instinct that comes from all that training, so that I can end up with a page that works, and I can learn how to put together the disparate pieces to make a unified whole at the end, but they don't start out that way. This started out as a sketch in my backyard and gradually morphed into all of that. And I love the fact that every page is completely different. So it just depends on what my mood is that day and what's happening. there was a horrible earthquake in 2011 in Japan, which caused great devastation, and there was a tsunami and all of that. And so this was my emotional response to that, was drawing the word earthquake just being shattered all to pieces, and just the horror and the pain. And that was my way of dealing with that. There was a huge tornado in Joplin, which decimated the city. And so I have drawn all sorts of houses and cars and destruction. Workshop weekend with the wonderful Sharon Zoigan. Another one of my travelogue pages. These were workshop notes, so it's just notes. Nothing particular artistic about them. Another workshop and color charts. She wanted me to stick with all these bright colors, and I couldn't hack it after a while, and so I went and did my own. This is a wonderful way of exploring color, by the way. If you take 3 colors, you have color A, color B, and color C. And this is a way that you can mix all of them together and see what happens. I love the color harmony in this page. And this was done over probably 2 weeks. Just drawing a little bit each day. And usually when I draw something like this, I do everything in black first and eventually go back then when it's drawn and paint in the colors.
But Cal has made a comment. I would love to see a time lapse of a page coming together.
Oh gosh, that would take a whole lot of time. Yeah, it's never occurred to me to do that because I just snatch the time. I never, I'm not just set up in the studio like that, but it's a fascinating idea. This is what you do over here on the right when you make a mistake. You just draw a cat and make it throw up over it. So it becomes a giant hairball. And then I took that same idea because I messed something up over here. And so I colored in all the background and colored this very dark, and these were lighter, but then I took a white gel pen and scribbled all through the insides and the counter spaces of the letters, and it made kind of a nice background and obliterated the mistake. So that was kind of cool. There's a lot of the Celtic knot and weaving type of stuff flowing through this. And I think one of the reasons the pages tend to look unified, even though they're made over so many different days, is the fact that I'm doing them in black first. And so then when I go back with the color, I can unify the pages with the color as well as with the way the lines go. And I do, these are little memorial pages, people I love. So this was my friend Dorcas. And so this was a bunch of things that reminded me of her. Class with Harvest Crittenden. At one point, I must have gotten bored, so I put my French curve down on the page, traced it, and then started coloring it in on the left. Another class with the wonderful Carla Sondheim, who is still teaching online. And if you, one of the most reasonable classes you can ever come across, you should definitely look up her page and see what she offers. When you buy a class, she has several years worth of year-long classes, and you have lifetime access to them once you've purchased the class. And I've really enjoyed her. She's definitely helped me free myself up creatively.
So Nancy, we have a couple questions about the pens that you're using. What is the black you are using that doesn't bleed? I'm guessing Pigma Micron markers. And Laura said, what did you say were the pens you liked?
I do use Pigma Microns a lot. And I also use the Platinum Carbon Pen, which is just slightly thicker, but it is a fountain pen that has permanent ink in it. And I love using that. It's a very stiff nib. It's not flexible at all. And so you can use it like a micron. But those two are my main go-tos because I like to watercolor over it. And they absolutely do not move. I've also used the G-Tech and C-Tech pens, which come in a variety of colors, and they are not waterproof. And so they do bleed a bit. And one can use that to great advantage. I'll have to look up maybe later and find and show you a page where I've actually drawn something with a, like a green G-Tech pen, and then taken a brush with water in it and pulled some of the color out of that to get really beautiful tints. Here again, I was in another class. This I must have gotten bored again. This is a protractor on the bottom left, and I ticked off every 10 degrees and made it into a peacock. March will mark 10 years since I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And that was quite a journey, and I had very aggressive treatment. And eventually, when I became a little bit stronger and better, I started writing about that journey. And so on the right began some of the pages where I talk about that. The page on the left is interesting. The designs around the words are actually taken from designs made in African slave quilts. And each one had a meaning, which I don't remember now, but it had to do with enslavement and freedom and movement. And to me, that spoke to me about the cancer journey being kind of simultaneously captured and freed by the treatment, because the treatment made me really, really sick for many months. but at the same time, it was what was necessary in order to give me life. And so this incredible balance of, the treatment that makes you as sick as possible without killing you because you're trying to kill the cancer. It was an interesting journey to go on in retrospect. It wasn't, to have that tug of literally being tied down with a port in your chest when you're getting chemo and not being able to move around, and having the stuff ultimately free you so that you have a life, hopefully. And in my case, I was very lucky that it worked. Whoops. Let me go back. I'm not quite sure what happened there, but so to me, those images spoke to me. So I incorporated them into this little tapestry about it. When I was well enough, I was able to go to that year's calligraphy conference, and I had a great class with Suzanne Moore, who was very gracious about accommodating me in my somewhat weakened state. And so I had lots of cool notes from her class, but then back into the cancer stuff. Whoops, excuse me. So here I'm using the Celtic knots to depict this vulnerable strength thing where I say it a complicated dance indeed, and I don't yet know all the steps. I was still trying to get well, coming to terms with a new body without breasts and without hair, and learning to dance anyway. And then in the middle of my journey in treatment, my mother died. And so that was just another added layer. And that happened very quickly. And so to me, on the bottom left, I drew this candle, which kind of has the middle knocked out of it, symbolizing her life cut short very quickly. And then I have what I call the re-pages, which I started thinking about, resetting my life and revamping and, revving up again. So I started thinking about all the re-words: rejoice, respect, remember, rekindle, restore, rejuvenate, rewind, and on, as a way of, here I go again. I'm going to build things back together. And so then I took some more re-words and then wrote little haikus about the cancer journey. And these are very strong, joyful colors. And I have all these plants down here, which are also vibrant and thriving, but they're all upside down. And to me, that symbolized, my life having been really turned upside down, but nonetheless still thriving. And then just to add to that whole mix as well, I was also in school for becoming a deacon when the cancer hit. And so I was trying to do my studies while being sick, and somehow made it through. And then in June of 2016, I was ordained. And that was a wonderful confirmation of having gotten through everything. And then moving on, another great class with Georgia Angelopoulos, some my notes from that. And then almost exactly a year after Mom died, my dad died. And I was very close to my dad, and he had Alzheimer's for over 10 years by the time he died. But I have his name and then this little nest with eggs in it, because to me, he was who made my home a home and made me feel like I had a home. And so to me, he was the nest. And then 3 days after my dad died, my great niece was born. So she's the little bird down here that's hatched. Eventually, my sister and I needed to go back to my parents' home and take it all apart. They lived in a retirement community that everyone had a separate home. So I did the piece on the left. The blue lettering says homes, but it's all broken up. And it's surrounded by bricks that are all higgledy-piggledy. And I wrote around it, they say home is where the heart is, but what happens to a home when the hearts which have made it a home have left it, never to return? And so that was my working through how hard it was to let all of that go, take it apart, disperse it. Charlottesville killings. Another really cool class with Georgia Angelopoulos on the right. Class notes from Amity Park's class. Oh, that must have been what, Montreal maybe? Well, this was a long, long conference I went to. And again, I took the notes first. It wasn't till later when I got home that I added the pictures and painted everything in. And then COVID hit. Another memorial page for a friend who died, and then yet another memorial page on the right. Then I took this amazing class with Mike Gold, who just blew my mind and really opened up my lettering freedom in drawing letters. And this really kicked off a whole new area for me of letting go. You know, this is a very different page from all of the other ones you've seen. But oh, what fun it was. And so then I started playing with this idea and drawing more and more. And that is the last page of that journal. Let me switch to my overhead and I will show you some of the things that, how my journals have morphed with the various journals recently. This little watercolor journal I bought just to see, that's colored pencil, how these would work. It says, you are the inexhaustible source and I am a tired little puddle of yesterday's rain. So this was okay. I mean, the surface isn't it isn't my artist text woven. I didn't have the tooth that I really loved with that, but nonetheless, making the best of it, branching out, I've started using acrylics and ballpoint pen a little more. And this tiny format then lends itself to a different kind of art compared to the larger page. These were some class notes, I believe. So the character changes with the size of the journal and the surface of the paper. That was a Susie Behringer class, I believe. Yeah. These were actually torn up tea bags that I turned into elephants. Blob creatures. It's the one I'm currently working on. This was another interesting drawing exercise using blind contours when you're looking at something and not at your page while you're drawing. This was the book that I started out with on Arches Text laid and then converted it to Arches Text wove, but these were the laid pages. I had to be very careful and use really light watercolor because it bled so much. So it was mostly watercolor, pen and pencil. So lettering. And I love doing freeform direct drawn letters. I use the Kemper tool a lot for that, which is this little gadget that you fill with watercolor or acrylic and draw with it like you would with a pen. And I really have enjoyed using the Posca paint markers, which is a lot of what these are. This is the woman on the right is simultaneous two-hand drawing that you do, putting a marker in both hands and drawing at the same time, and then going in and fleshing it out with whatever comes out. That was my class page from this past year's calligraphy conference, Roman Holiday. Another memorial page here from my friend Roger. More two-handed drawing. So now I'm back into the Arches text wove, and it was much easier to go back to heavier painting. These were more class notes. And then with the drawn lettering, I love the freedom it gives to just go all over the place. This is one of the exercises we do in the class, which is great fun. And it looks difficult, but it actually isn't, and it works. This page I love. It did not start out that way, but I spilled a jar of water all over the page. And Bister ink runs like crazy when you spill water on it. And so from brown lettering, I ended up with a lot of yellow lettering and a lot of streaking. So I went back in and kind of cleaned up some areas in between, and it ended up being kind of cool. This was a piece I did of word painting, the assignment was to pick a word and convey its meaning without doing an illustration. draw on lettering with watercolor. This is one I'm working on now. And then I did another super large format. I took a large Mahara watercolor journal and sawed it in half. And so I had these long, wide pages. Zoom out. That I was working on, which demand a whole different kind of design. This is acrylic and layering acrylic and hand-on lettering. Anyway, so that's a sampling of all the crazy stuff I do. But I think I'm out of time, and I did want to leave a little room if anyone wanted to have any questions.
Heather has a couple things in the chat. She says, I had the honor of holding one of Nancy's sketchbooks at Sea Letters. So beautiful, humbling. I was in such awe. It brought tears to my eyes. And
Aw.
she also says, Nancy, can you talk about the workshop you are offering?
Yes, it is 4 weeks, 3 hours each week. And each week I will teach you a technique for engaging with a blank page to get over your fear of it. And a lot of it has to do with making you do things that can't possibly be your fault, like scribbling with your eyes closed and making something out of the scribbles, and learning how to be a little bit bolder on the page. Because to me, my journals are great, but they're mine. And what I want to do more than anything else in this class is to help you get yourself, your own soul, onto the page. And whatever way I can facilitate that happening so that you and your style begins to emerge and you begin to make friends with the page, that excites me more than anything. That's what the class is about. And that's why it's called Out of Your Mind and Onto the Page. Because everything that is in my journals is very personal, and it's just come out of me, and I've managed to find ways to translate it and put it on the page. And I want other people to be able to have the chance to start to do that, whether it's in a journal or just individual sheets. But there's something amazing when you can engage with the artwork you're doing at a personal level in a way that means something to you. And so that's what the class is going to be. And skill level doesn't matter. I've had a whole range of different abilities, and everybody ends up coming out with just amazingly fantastic stuff.
Meantime, Evelyn says, can you talk more about using the Kemper fluid writer?
Yeah, I do that in the class. It's basically a pipe with a hole in it that you put ink in, which is kind of what a fountain pen is too, when you come to think about it, except that you don't have a groove. You just have that little, where'd I put it? Little, can you see the little pipe coming out the bottom?
Yes.
So it creates a monoline, and the reservoir holds quite a bit of ink or watercolor or whatever you want to put in it. So that what I use it for is drawing the outline of, I can make a 3-inch letter if I want, drawing the outline. And if you're using watercolor on watercolor paper, that outline is still wet. And then you can take a brush and flood it with color. And because water has a surface tension, as long as you don't go past your line that you've drawn, it's like filling a swimming pool with color, and it just all flows into the letter that you've drawn with the Kemper tool. And so it gives you a great deal of versatility. Is there
Evelyn
something else?
says your journals had a mention of Mary Oliver. Did she influence your writing?
I love Mary Oliver. I find her poetry very moving. But I don't know if she's influenced my writing, but she certainly influenced my heart. And her passionate way of writing really, really does something to me.
Is there room for one more question?
Sure.
Earlier in the journals, you showed something I'd never seen before with color mixing. There were the 3 squares with 1 square on top, 4 squares. And you said
yeah.
it was a way to do the, can you say anything more about that? I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, it was really fun. So what she did was to take, you would take color A, you have colors A, B, and C. So you put color A in the middle, and then color B over here and color C over here. And so color A would then overlap with B to get AB here. A would overlap with color C over here to get color AC. And then above, you would mix all 3.
Ah. Huh. A and AB.
So here, this is actually a better indication because you can see the basics. So here's color A. Here's color B way over here. And here's C over here. And so A and C mixed together make this. A and B mixed together make and ABC make that.
Huh. That's cool. Thank you.
All right, Nancy, thank you so very much for speaking with us tonight. We really enjoyed seeing your beautiful, beautiful journals. Every single page was beautiful, whether you thought so or not.
And I hope that you'll be interested in taking the class, because I can't tell you the incredible work that's come out of these classes. I've taught this about, I don't know, maybe 6 times now. And each time it's so different and amazing. And I think people really surprise themselves, which is glorious to see. All right. Bye for now.